The title of my sermon today is Follow the Leader. Follow the leader. And as a way of introduction, I was with my wife about 5 months ago, and she became pregnant. I know how it happened, but she became pregnant. Know how it works now? I have a 6-year-old daughter. I have a 3-year-old son, and so my wife, she became pregnant, and so I'm like, man, how'd that happen? She says we gotta go to the doctor, and so we go to the doctor, and we're sitting down, and we're sitting in the room there, and I met her there. She went a little bit before me so she can get all geared up for this thing. And at this point, we're still like in shock that we're pregnant, because we were about a week early, or about 2 or 3 weeks earlier, Diana told her dad, or maybe about a month earlier, she told her dad, she goes, I think we're done. She says, man, Hope is awesome. Trip is all kinds of messed up. Any kid with the name Trip, you know he's going to be a little bit aggressive, you know? And so he's a handful, and she goes, I think we're done, Dad. I'm pretty sure we're done, and it was a fun run, you know? 2 kids is more than plenty. And I was like, yeah, 2, I love that, Di. 2 is plenty. Right now, with 2 kids, you can play man on man. And if you go more than 2 or 3, you got to play zone. And zone never works out really good for me. I'd rather play man on man. And so we go to the hospital, and I get there, and she's like, are you excited? I'm like, still shocked, hon. But yeah, I'm excited. I got my church face on. Yeah, brother, bless you, you know. Talking to my wife in church language. I'm like, yeah, God bless you, you know. And God's really blessed us, you know. And not believing anything that I'm saying, but it sounds good coming off my lips. And so she says, you know, your mom's crazy. I love her. She says because this pregnancy has been so different, there's probably 2 babies in there. And so by the time I get there, the doctor says to me, how's the pregnancy going? Oh, I feel kind of sick. And the doctor says, oh, we'll see how many are in there then. So I'm like, oh man. She's telling me this, and I'm excited. I'm getting myself excited about the 3rd kid, and I'm like, man, Lord knows we can't handle 2 kids, 2 more, because we're having a good enough time with the 2 we got. And I'm just being honest. People are like, oh, kids are easy. No, they're not. Anybody who ever said kids were easy, they're a liar, you know? And so we're there, and my wife, you know, she's there, and they're doing the examination, and they're like looking, and sure enough, I'm there. I see one sac go up there, and I see him zoom in. Like I see this little pad in a little bit. I'm like, oh, cool. There's a heartbeat, because you want to see that. You want to see some type of movement or something. That's the first thing you want to do. And I've been in church world. I've been a pastor for 10 years, and so I've seen so many people not be able to have a child. So you want it to be healthy. People are like, what do you want, a boy or a girl? I'm like, just healthy. I'll take healthy. I don't care if it's a boy or a girl, or if it's whatever it is. I just want it to be healthy. And so I see her zoom in, and my wife at that point, I don't know if she looked away, but I saw her zoom out again. I saw, oh my word, there's 2 sacs in her stomach. And at that point, I was like, this is not good. This is not good. And I know a lot of you guys have been wondering they're having twins, and a lot of you guys are like, I wonder what Wesley thought. Because usually you don't have to ask me what I think. I'm just going to tell you anyways. So a lot of you guys are like, I wonder what Wesley thought. I thought the same thing you thought. Oh my goodness. And so sure enough, she goes, Miss, they never tell the dad. They don't care. They don't care that I'm there. It's like it's all about the lady, you know, and she carries him around for 9 months. What's the big deal, you know? So she says, Miss, there's 2 in there. And Diana's like, oh my goodness. Oh. And I'm like, on the inside, I am flipping out. But on the outside, I'm as cool as can be. I'm like Miami Vice on the outside. I'm just like smooth. I'm like, no big deal, babe. This is awesome. And then I looked down at her, I said, babe. At that point, she had wanted 4 kids a long time ago. And I said, man, I only wanted 2. I grew up, I'm number 2 of 6 kids. And so I know less is better. Just makes sense. So I said to my wife, I said, this is great. You wanted 4 kids all along. You know, I'm trying to make the best scenario possible of this thing. But on the inside, so we get done, and I played the tough guy the whole time. Like, babe, this is great. I'm so excited. I got in the car, and I remember the first things out of my mouth that I can tell you guys. I'm just kidding. It was this. I got in my car, and she's like, I'll meet you up the street for lunch. And I'm like, at this point, I'm sick. I'm going to have to shove food down my stomach that I don't want. You know, I'm in knots, you know. And I'm like, the first thing I said out loud in the car is like, what just happened? You ever have that moment where you're like, what just happened? And I mean, it's crazy. And so we begin to, my wife went and got a 3D, one of those 3D deals, and 3D sonograms. And I didn't go because I'm like, we've already had 2 kids. You know how guys are. Once you've had one, it's like riding a bicycle, you know? Well, we're having 2 additional ones. It's not like riding a bicycle from what I've been told, but we got a 3D picture. I think we have it. I don't know if you guys have ever been to one of those things, but I haven't either, but I want to show it to you guys if we have it. If we don't, that's cool too. Yeah. Yeah, that says girl on the left side and boy on the right side if you can't see, and that's pretty cool. And there's one more picture, I don't know, but the boy is bad already. He's kicking her in the face right now. That's what's going on there. And it's amazing. It's amazing. Do you know, guys, you don't know this, guys, I'm going to tell you, but when ladies go and get this 3D sonogram thing, they actually record this thing. So I walk in the house the other day, and my wife's watching TV. I'm like, oh, what you watching? She's like, I'm watching the sonogram. I said, huh? She goes, I'm watching the sonogram. I said, babe, you were at the sonogram. And so when it got done, I'm like, you watched 2 dark movements for 20 full minutes? And she looked at me with a judgmental look. It was okay because I already judged her, so it was like mutual judgment. I'm like, what do you watch that? You're going to watch this? And she'll probably watch it again. I took the DVD and hid it. You know, I'm like, don't waste 20 minutes. If God comes back and you're watching those, you're going to have plenty of time to watch those 2 twins run around when they get here. You're going to have your hands full. We are going to have our hands full because they're both of ours, someone told me. And so we're going to have our hands full. But what I've done over the last few 5-6 months since this has happened, I've paid attention to my kids so closely. I've locked in with them. I've locked in my daughter more. I've locked in my son more because I know that I'm not going to have alone time with just my 6-year-old like I did before my son came. And I know I'm not going to have the same amount of time that I have with my son now because I'm going to have 2 more kids. So I've begun to lock in and watch these kids so closely. And so I watch their behavior. My son is completely different than my daughter. My daughter is saved and sweet. My son is an atheist. I mean, he's not there yet. He's not there yet. You know, the Bible talks about a sin nature. My son has a sin nature. His started early. I mean, he is a handful. The other day, he rolled down the steps. I wasn't there. My wife was. It was her fault. And, you know, he looked back at the steps and was like, you got in my way. I mean, that kid, nothing hurts him. If he falls down on the concrete and scrapes his knee up, he's like, he thinks bleeding to him is so cool. He's like, blood. I love this stuff. You know, he's just a dirty kid. I walk in, Dinah said, babe, cleaning the bathroom is so much harder with Trip. I said, because he'll pee over the whole bathroom. He doesn't care. He's not trying to aim. He's just trying to get out of his system. He does not care. And he's a whole new different creature. But I've watched him, and what I've watched about my kids is that they both have some skills that we all can learn from. And what I've realized about my kids is that they all follow differently. My daughter follows a certain way, my son follows a different way, my twins actually, they follow as well, but they all follow a certain kind of way, and we can learn from that because God's called us all to follow Him. And what I realized more recently than I realized that as Christians and Christianity, the thing that we do the most is we get saved, we meet Jesus, but then we quit following the leader. We're like, I'm going to do this without you. You've seen the bumper sticker, Jesus is my co-pilot. That's great if you're flying an airplane. But when you're walking with Jesus, He can't be the co-pilot. He has to be the pilot. He can't be a suggestion or an option for follow. He's got to be the only object of your affection that you follow. We got to follow Him because if we don't follow Him, things get sideways. I can get people to pop up all across the room and tell people what happens when you don't follow Jesus. And I'm not talking about asking Him into your life. I'm talking about the day-to-day following Him every day. I told Jordan, I said, I think I want to talk about following the leader. He said, that's the problem with every Christian. We all have a hard time following. Because when you follow, you got to release that you're not the leader. And isn't that hard to do? I'm super, super, super independent. I like to go on my own, do my own thing. And when I started asking God all these questions, you know when something happens that you don't want to happen, you begin to ask God all the questions? that you may not say out loud, but you know exactly the questions that I'm talking about. So I was like, God, I really didn't want twins. It was kind of like he said to me, it's too late, you know? I'm like, thanks, I already knew that. And I was like, God, we just bought a vehicle last year, and Lord, please, you know my heart, God. You know no man should ever have to drive a minivan, God, and I don't want to drive a minivan. When I got married, I was like, Pastor Dave, I'll marry your daughter, but anything, I told my wife, I said, we just can't drive a minivan. I'll marry you, but no minivan, you know? And I said, no. So sure enough, we find a minivan, we're already driving it, it's awesome. And my wife's like, this is so cool. This is red like my mom's. I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. It's really awesome for me, babe. Because, you know, I get in there and I'm driving a candy apple red minivan around. You can't look cool driving a candy apple red minivan. No matter how tough you are. You can have a tank top on. You can have work clothes on and the grease all over your arms. And you still don't look like a masculine man in a minivan. It doesn't happen. You know what I'm saying, Dave Sturgill? It just doesn't happen. He doesn't drive one. He doesn't drive one because he's a man. You know, a man should have to drive a minivan. And so I'm in this minivan driving around. I cannot believe I'm in this minivan still. But, you know, we're in good company because I realized this, the disciples had a hard time following the leader as well. Could you imagine being the guys that walked around them all the time but yet still having a hard time following the leader? It almost doesn't make any sense to us, does it? Like, they saw the miracles, but there's some instances in the scripture where you see them not following well. You see them not following strong. And they're with them all the time. If I would have saw Jesus walk across water, in my mind, I think, man, I would never question him. But we see the disciples, they walk with him, they talk with him, they spend time with him, and yet they still have a hard time following the leader. And so I want to look at a passage of scripture today where the disciples had a hard time following the leader. If you have a Bible, Luke chapter 8. If you don't, the verses will be on the screen. Luke chapter 8, verses 22. Luke 8:22. It reads as follows. Now it happened on a certain day that Jesus, got into the boat with his disciples. And he said to them, let us cross over to the other side of the lake. And they launched out, but as they sailed, Jesus took a nap. Even Jesus Christ took naps. Just makes sense. We should too. Everyone's like, amen. This is my kind of preacher. We all should take naps. If you're like, I don't need naps. If you haven't taken a nap in a long time, you need to go home today and take a nap. And if you got yard work to do, get permission from your wife before you take the nap. All right? Don't say, well, Wes said I could take a nap before I did the yard. I didn't say that. I said you should go home and take a nap. Should have mowed yesterday. But as they sailed, he fell asleep, and a windstorm came down the lake, and they were filling it with they were filling with water, and they were in jeopardy. Now this is the Sea of Galilee. There, it's really a lake, which is weird that they call it Sea of Galilee, but it's really a lake, and it's 13 miles wide, 7 miles wide, 13 miles long. It's only 150 feet deep. All right, only. So today we could go there with scuba diving gear. Not me, but someone could. 150 feet deep. These guys knew that. And what happened was, because this sea, it was, these guys were master fishermen. These disciples, they were really, really good fishermen. But the Sea of Galilee was 600 plus feet below sea level. And so they really couldn't, it was in this valley essentially. So they couldn't really see a storm coming. There was no radar system saying there was a storm coming. So they weren't prepared for the storm. They were going on a typical day, like you and I go on a typical day. They were going across this sea there, going across the water there, and the storm came out of nowhere. They didn't see it coming, which happened a ton. And what you find out when you read about this later, this is just interesting facts that you can read in a study Bible, that on any given day, there's typically about 300 plus boats that are out there fishing. And so there's waves going on, and it says there that when the winds came and the storm came, that there's possibly the waves could have been about 20 feet high. That would scare me. I don't know about you. And so the disciples began to panic while their leader was taking a nap. And that's a little bit opposite of culture, right? When you go to battle, the president or the secretary of state and all these guys that the cabinet that makes up, they're up and they're playing in the battle. The secretary of defense, these guys, they're getting ready for the battle. They're getting ready for the press conferences. They're getting ready, the Navy, the Army, all these guys, they're getting ready to fight, and the leaders aren't taking naps. The guys might be taking naps while the guys are plotting in the war room. They're getting ready for battle, but the leaders never sleep, and the leader's getting ready for the battle. But Jesus, the leader here, he's taking a nap. And it says there in verse 24, and they came to him, and they woke him up. That's got to be scary to wake Jesus up. My wife, since the pregnancy with 2 kids is different than pregnancy with 1 kid. Just in case you didn't know that, it's different. My wife takes more naps. She does things that she did up until the pregnancy with 1 kid, she doesn't do now with months to go. People come to her all the time and they'll talk to her and she'll say, how far along are you? And they'll say 8 or 9 months, and she'll look down at her belly and she'll say, oh, we're the same size, but I got 3 more months to go. Because with twins, it's just different. It's way different. But I don't wake Diana up with twin pregnancy. I'm afraid of her, like she may throw something, she needs to sleep, she needs to nap. I don't want to mess with her. The other day, Tina came over and they're talking about painting the twins' room. Now, I didn't want to paint the rooms. I told my wife, I said, babe, I'd rather just pay David Ventura or Charlie. They're better than I am. It can happen in one day. You're not going to boss them around like you boss me around. Like, I'd rather just do this. And Tina's at my house, and she goes, Wes, we can do it tomorrow. And I thought she had a mouse in her pocket because she said, we. I'm like, I do not want to paint this thing. And then Tina tells her, well, we can do this pattern and this pattern and this pattern. I'm thinking, I don't even want to paint straight. I definitely don't want to do a stinking pattern. There's nothing about me wants to do a pattern. I'm already driving a minivan. How much more pattern can there be? I don't want to put patterns. And so I'm in there painting, but these ideas just come. It's just different. And so that was a sidetrack. Back to the message. I don't want to wake her up. I don't know where I was going with that. It was probably good, though. And they came to him, and they woke him up. They said, Master, Master, we're dying here. When my kids wake my wife up or wake me up, it's kind of like a little tap. My daughter's sweet. She's like, hey, Dad. My son's like, Dad. He's just yelling in my ear. You awake? I'm like, you're yelling in my ear. Of course I'm awake. That's the difference between a boy and a girl, But they said, Jesus, wake up, wake up. And when he arose, he rebuked the wind and the raging of the water, and they ceased, and there was a calm. But he said to them, where is your faith? And they were afraid, and they marveled, saying to one another. Now this is what piqued my interest. Here's what they say to him, and this is weird. And this isn't any translation you read, but this is in the New King James translation and the King James translation. But it says there, "Who can this guy be? What just happened?" And it says on, "For he command even the winds and the water, and they obey him." Now, what kind of question is that? You've been traveling with him all this time, and you ask the question, "Who can this guy be?" This guy can stop the wind and rain. And I think we're a lot like that, which is why we don't follow him sometimes, which is why I don't follow him sometimes, because sometimes I forget who he is. And whenever you and I forget who he is, then that's when we don't begin to follow him. Whenever we begin to put ourselves above him and we put him below us, it's like we forget who he is and forget who he was and forget who he always will be. And it gets us off track. And we begin to follow ourselves and we kind of slide Jesus over to the co-pilot. And then things go wrong. And then we don't need him again until things go really, really, really wrong. And we're mad at him, so that's why we're talking to him again. But I realize that Jesus has called all of us, no matter how big the storm, no matter how small the storm, that no matter whether it's good or it's bad, we have to follow him. It's what he called us to do. And we make it more complicated sometimes than it really needs to be. It's just really, really hard, Wes. I don't know what to wear. You don't have to wear whatever you normally wear. Well, I don't say the same things you say. That's probably good. I'm weird. You don't have to. You just got to follow him. What I realized as a leader, I like it when other leaders are around. I run with Debbie and Randy Maddox. I love when they're around because when they're around and I'm with a group of people, they're the leaders. I don't mind. I follow. I love just following sometimes. It's nice. And it's better to follow Jesus. I had the opportunity this year to help out with Awana more. And we had 2 leaders. I love that we have leaders because I just do whatever they tell me to do. Plug in extension cords, sweep up stuff. That's easier. That's my kind of leadership there, Randy. It's hard having to tell people where to go, what to do all the time. It's nice sometimes just to sit and to listen. But we got to do that same type of mentality that we have at our work with our boss that we need to have with Jesus. We just kind of sit back and just watch him and say, hey, where do you want to go? Where do you want to take us? And Jesus said, Wes, I gave you these twins because I need you to know something. You're not the leader. I had a pretty good plan set out. It was a really good plan. On paper, it was smooth. Those of you guys that are contractors and architects, you put a plan on paper, it looks really, really good. And then someone comes through and just destroys the thing. I had one of those moments. God's like, your plan was good, but I got a better plan. I'm going to change things up, and we're going to play follow the leader, Wes. You got too comfortable. You got to a place where you don't need me anymore. And it's easy for me to say that I'm up here, but it's got to translate to you as well. I don't know what your thing is, but for me, God just said, hey, you're not, Wes, you're not in charge. You're not the leader. And so as I watch my kids, I see that they've got some following skills. I told you that I would do that. I also wanted to say this. I brought a prop. It just makes sense that I bring a prop. It's back here. This is a swimming pool. Not my kid, a swimming pool. Because we just go to my in-laws. They can't get rid of us. We just go to their pool. But what I wanted to say before I get into this, because you have to have context, but what I want you to know is this, that a lot of times that you and I wrote this in my notes, a lot of the times you and I will look like 20-foot waves to you and I, to God it looks like a little swimming pool. And we're panicking. Could you imagine if I was laying down in this pool and I started panicking like I was drowning, and I'm a really good swimmer? You would say, Wes, it's only, just stand up, it's 6 inches. My son is 3. He just finished swimming lessons on Friday. He can survive now. I didn't say he could swim, but he could survive. But you and I, we see 20-foot waves, and up to where the speaker's out, we see 20-foot waves, maybe a little bit shy of that, and we're like, God, this is so huge. And God's like, it's just like a little puddle. It's really not that big. You can follow me. The wave may look big to you, but to me, the wave's really not that big, Wes. It's really like a little kiddie pool. It's like a little puddle, which my son loves puddles. He's got all kinds of issues. But he gets them from his dad, not his mom. If she wasn't here, he'd get them from her and not from me, but she's in here. Here's what I see about my kids. A couple things I wrote down. Here's number one. If you're going to be a good leader, you got to be cool or satisfied with coming in last. My daughter had her own room before Trip. Trip came, she had her own room. Now the twins are here. She doesn't have her own room. My sweet little princess has to share a room with her dirty, little, 3-year-old, annoying, mimicking little brother. The first night, he climbs up the steps. I hear him climbing up the steps. Oh! He gets up there and he's just like, and he's like giving her CPR, chest convulsions. He's like, wake up! And you would have thought something bad was going on. He just wanted her to wake up. I said, Trip, everything okay? Yeah, I just want to wake her up. I just want to wake her up. She's getting better with putting other people in front of herself. When we have an electronic device in the car, which my wife hates, but I enjoy because it's a little bit quieter with one in the car. If Hope has it, she doesn't mind sharing. Trip doesn't understand the concept of sharing, but my daughter, she doesn't mind coming in last. When these kids get here, she doesn't mind because she's going to be the one that gets to hold them. I'm going to keep Trip far away from Trip. Will try to roll him down the steps. I mean, the kid is just depraved. I mean, his sin nature is deep. Hope's going to pick him up. Hope carries the baby around all the time now. So she doesn't mind helping out two little twins. I'm going to trust her for a long time. Trip, it's going to be a while. Maybe when he's 15 or 16, you know. But you and I, we've got to be cool with coming to last. But you know what, my daughter, she's gonna be the boss when all this comes around, when the kids get there, she's going to be the biggest helper. I wrote down this, Jordan gave me this, but everyone sees the glory, but no one ever sees the full story. Everyone sees the glory, but no one ever sees the full story. I made a decision a long time ago as a young leader that I wasn't going to take people and sit on their shoulders. I was going to take people and put them on my shoulders so they could see over the fence. I wanted to bring I made a decision. I wanted to bring young leaders along so they could become better than I was. I see up here today, Jordan was up here today, Adam was up here today, Eddie was on the drum. That was my wife, that was our first youth group band 7 years ago when we got here. My wife led those guys. And Jordan's become a phenomenal worship leader, and I'm going to embarrass him because I can, but my wife, they would practice a whole worship set. It would and we'd have a countdown going, and Jordan and Diana said, you're going to lead this song, Jordan, you're going to do great. I got it. I said, I come to Diana and said, how was practice? She goes, practice was great. Jordan's going to lead the first song. I would see them with 30 seconds left. He'd look down and says, I can't do it. He'd back away from his mic, and my wife would sub it to her mic, and she would lead that song. He wasn't ready for that yet. But over 7 years, I watched him grow to become a great leader. But what I decided to do with Jordan and Adam and all those guys that I come along with, Pam was up here today. Her husband was one of our leaders in one of our other departments. When I got around those young guys, I decided to put those guys on my shoulder and let them see over the fence. And you and I, if we're going to be followers like Jesus, we got to be willing to come in last. The disciples weren't worried about Jesus. They were worried about themselves. That's why they were panicking. If they looked at the leader was taking a nap. They could have all been taking a nap. True or false? True. Because if Jesus was taking a nap, they could have been taking a nap. If Jesus wasn't worried, they didn't have to be worried, because unless Jesus was worried, they didn't need to be worried because the leader wasn't worried. But we got to be willing to come in last. And my daughter, she's learning that lesson. Here's the second thing I wrote down. Not only do we got to be willing to come in last, but we got to be willing to go everywhere. Everywhere he wants us to go. We just got to make it happen. No matter if he says go there, we just got to find a way to get there. And a lot of times we don't, instead of trying to figure out how to get there, we're trying to figure out if he wants us to go. He wants us to go. He wants you to go. The church is called to be a movement. You're the church. He wants you going. He wants you moving. And when he says go, he just wants you to get up and he wants you to go. You just got to figure out how to get there. And the good news is that you get to go with him. He's right by your side going with you. The Bible says he doesn't leave you, he doesn't forsake you. That means wherever you go, he's going with you. This past yesterday, we did a funeral right here for Jack and Vita's grandson. And I called Vita on Wednesday and I said, Vita, I love her and Jack. Man, they've had this past year, couple years, it's been the 20-foot waves. And that's what life's like. Sometimes it's 20-foot waves, and sometimes it's a little pond sometimes. But man, it's been the 20-foot waves, hasn't it? I love Vita. I call Vita, she says, man, just pray for us. God's going to see us through. And I'm like, I don't know how that works, but you say, oh yeah, God's going to make it happen. But I've never been in that situation before. So I can't say that I'd be like they would say, but they've been through this. Say, man, God's going to see us through. This past year, God's seen us through. And the year before that, God has seen us through, and God has seen us through. They're just going wherever God wants them to go. They're just making it happen. And when I realized about my twins, they're stuck to Diana. They're good followers. They can't leave her, they can't forsake her. They do forsake her sometimes. They use like a punching bag, but they just punch them. My wife loves those twins. They go everywhere she goes. She's got, her wardrobe is evolving because she gets bigger. She's never had maternity clothes this big before because she never had twins before. But it's just like they're growing and they're going with her, and she's just going. And when she goes to swimming lessons with Trip and Hope, they go with her. When she goes anywhere, they go with her. And we just got to go with God. When he wants us to go with them, we just got to figure out how we're going to make it happen. You just got to make it happen. And just go with them. And that's the twins. And then here's my third one. And I really have watched my kids, and this has been a huge shaping 5 months for me. It's been a huge 5 months for me. And I'm a pastor, so I tell everyone, God's going to see you through. God's going to take care of you. It took two people for me to kind of wake up. Randy and Debbie Maddox said, God's going to take care of you. He's going to sell your car. He's going to find you the other car. And I was like, yeah, God, he's going to see me through it. Yeah, he's going to see me. And I was just saying, yeah. On the inside, I was like, man, this is going to be hard. And Herman and Soma, they're in one of our community groups. And man, we try to get people from this big gathering right here into Bible study hour, and from Bible study we try to get them into homes. It's how we work, from big group environments to small group environments to homes. It's kind of how it works. And church works really good in a home. It works really, really, really good in a home. I mean, that's how it happened in Acts chapter 2. There was no big buildings like this. It happens really good in a home. This is great, but it happens really, really, really good in homes. And she said to me, Soma said to me, you need to be thankful for what you got. And I was like, whenever people you invest in begin to turn around and invest back into you and throw your own stuff back into your face, that's a good feeling. I accept it. I like it because I need that. And there'll be leaders in our church. They've been here for a year, and God's grooming them and shaping them. They say, you always say God takes care of us, and you kind of need to take some of your own medicine. I was like, so here's the third thing. We got to go everywhere he goes. Here's the third thing. You got to be willing to go. You got to be willing to receive what God gives you. You got to be willing to receive whatever God gives you, and whether it's good or bad. My son today, if you see him, he'll be wearing a pair of basketball shoes to church. Which I know some of you guys like, you shouldn't wear basketball. You should dress up for church. You really should. I did today. I dressed up for church. I just think you got to get, my belief is, I've been a youth pastor for 10 years. I believe we got to get the next generation in the building however we can. So I don't really care what they wear. I do believe this, moms and dads, whatever you buy for them to wear to public school or whatever school they go to, they got to be able to wear it to church. That was a freebie. It's a little bit easier to say when you're not the youth pastor. You know, you just kind of oversee it now. And I said it when I was a youth pastor, but it's easier. Whatever you let them wear to school, they got to be able to wear to church. I always tell our young girls, my wife and I, we always tell them this: modest is hottest. Modest is hottest. They love it. They repeat it after me. It's awesome. If a girl comes on TV and she looks scantily dressed, my wife says, Hope, that's not how we dress. And Hope's like, modest is hottest. You know, she knows. Trip, I'm going to train him up one day. Modest is hottest. If she's half dressed, don't bring her home. Take her to Old Navy, you know, have her mom take her to Old Navy, buy her something a little bit more modest, and you can bring her home. No. But he got a pair of shoes. Jordan Brown, who I've invested for 7 years, and he now invests in my son. And Jordan got a pair of these same shoes for his birthday. And for his birthday, he bought the same exact pair of shoes. Jordans, Debbie. They're cheaper for children's, Debbie, by the way. And I've never bought a pair of these shoes because I have a pastor's salary, which the Lord takes care of us. But I've never bought a pair. But he had a pair when he was 1. He had a pair when he was 2. Everyone buys him. 2 people, him and my brother-in-law, buy him these shoes. But man, when he got these shoes, I think we had a picture of him. When he got the shoes, I looked in the back of the car. He was kissing the shoes. I don't even know if we have that picture, but he was kissing the shoes when he first got these shoes. And then that night, there he is. He doesn't even look like trouble. And some of you guys are like, oh, he's so cute. You don't live with him. And then that night I saw him. He had the box in the bed with him. He slept with the Jordans. Yeah, there they are. You can see the little jump man in the top right there. Debbie, did your son sleep with the shoes? No, you wouldn't let him because that's weird. But my kid's weird and I let him be weird. But my son, he slept. And the next day he goes, I want to wear these. I want to wear these. And I'm like, you're not wearing those today. But he loves it. But you know, he loves a good gift. But you know what he doesn't like? He doesn't like a spanking. I don't want a spanking. They're now in bunk beds in one room. He just annoys the heck out of her. He just annoys her non-stop. Shaking the bed. He'll be like, Hope, quit annoying me. It'll be pitch quiet and he just says that. Hope, quit annoying me. And Dinah will say, Trip, do you want me to get the spoon and come up there? And he's like, no, I don't want a spanking. I don't want a spanking. I don't want a spanking. But when he was 2, he's 3. When he was 2, he would say, I'd say, Chip, you're being bad. He goes, give me a spanking. Give me a spanking. But now he's getting a little bit smart. He's like, I don't want a spanking. I don't want a spanking. But here's what it is. You got to be willing to receive whatever God gives you. It's how he shapes you. It's how he shapes you. Whatever he gives you, you got to be willing to receive it. And so this could have been, my son has a pair of shoes from Target that my wife bought him on sale. That's how we roll. He loves those. He got those. They're not the same as these. These are a little bit different for him, but he'll appreciate a new pair of shoes. He'll take it. He'll receive whatever we give him because he didn't have a choice. Whatever we give my daughter to wear, she has to receive that, whatever. Neither one of them likes spanking, but you got to be willing to receive whatever God gives you, whether it be good or bad. And I hate saying that because it's like, I hate when bad things happen. I hate when bad things happen. But when the storms come, when the waves are 20 foot high, that's when God shows up. Jack and Vita's grandson yesterday, his dad led his birth mom to the Lord the night before the funeral. If the storm wouldn't have came, the 20-foot waves wouldn't have came in their house, they wouldn't have brought him in. And that's what the church brings people in. They brought their grandson into his house. Not perfect and cleaned up, just, hey, come as you are, and begin to love them, begin to love them, begin to love them. And people have trusted Christ. Man, you don't see that stuff. No one ever sees a story. They see the glory. But man, if the big storms don't come, how can God be glorified? Can he be glorified in the small storms? Absolutely. So that's just a couple of things I wrote down. 3 things I learned from my kids. You gotta be willing to come in last. You gotta be willing to go everywhere God goes, and you gotta be willing to receive everything that he gives you. And I close with this. Jesus told those waves, the guys lay down and to chill out. And even those waves followed the leader. Those waves, it's something else when the waves know who Jesus is, but when people don't know who the waves are. Isn't that something? The waves are like, all right, cool, we're down. Cool. Don't dry us up. Don't part us like the Red Sea. Like, we're cool. We're going to stop. And they begin to chill. We got to take a lesson from our leader. I wrote down this in closing, that God is unstoppable, and so are those who follow him. It just makes sense to follow him. It's better that way. Since I let go, like the song, Disney song says, let it go, let it go. I've got the whole song memorized. Don't ask me to sing it, but I can. We gotta let ourselves go. We gotta let our stuff go so we can be a better follower. And usually it's not stuff that gets in the way, it's we get in the way. We get in the way. We begin to worry. And so if you're like, you know what, I haven't followed God in a long time. My past is too deep. There's no past that's too deep. That's the good news. That's the gospel. There's nothing that's too deep. You're not too far deep where God says, I can't help you anymore. He says, come back home. I've been with you the whole way anyways. Let's do this thing. Let's go together. Just come with me. Get out of the pilot seat. Let Jesus get in the pilot seat and begin to go. I saw this quote last night. You can't reach for anything new if your hands are full of yesterday's junk. You can't reach for anything new if your hands are full of yesterday's junk. And I finished with this. Remember, we are writing tomorrow's past today. We are writing tomorrow's past today. How will you go through the storms? How will you go through the easy, the creeks, the easy seasons of life? Whether it be good or bad, we got to go with God. And with God, it always, what I've seen, my limited years of living, 31 years, 32 in July, it always works out in God's economy. It always works out. It always works out. But we've got to become better followers so we can see us through it. So we can see us through it. I meet with people every week who are going through storms and going through life. Whenever they relinquish themselves and their stuff, and they start following Jesus, it just gets better. This is better. They say, this is better this way. I like this way better. Sure, things are hard. Sure, it ain't always easy, but it's better with Jesus. And so let's be the type of people who are great followers. And let's follow the leader, who's the same yesterday, today, and forever. Let's bow our head in a word of prayer.